The following is a videotape deposition of Antonio Trupiano, taken the matter of the estate of JoAnn Matouk Romain, the city of Grosse Pointe Farms. This case to be held in the United States District Court of the Eastern District of Michigan, Southern Division, before the Honorable Linda Parker. The case number is 14 CV 12289. We are located at 90 Kirby Road, Grosse Pointe Farms, Michigan. Today's date is September 25th, 2015. The time is approximately 11:14. Now, counsel, introduce yourselves, please.
Solomon Radner here on behalf of the plaintiffs.
May it please the court, George DeGroot on behalf of the City of Grosse Pointe Farms, Daniel Jensen, Holly Krismanich, Jack Patterson, Andrew Rogers, Richard Rosati, Michael McCarthy, Keith Colombo, Antonino Trupiano, Jeffrey McKean, Wesley Kipke, John Walko, Frank Zielinski, and Ricky Good. For the record, Mr. Mark Pizer, counsel for co-defendant Timothy Matouk, has indicated that he will be arriving later today and that we may proceed in his absence.
Gus Morris, appearing on behalf of the City of Grosse Pointe Woods, Andrew Pazahowski, John Kosenki, John Ross, Keith Wazak, and Anthony Chalut.
Sir, if you raise your right hand, please. Do you swear the testimony you're about to give should be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Witness is sworn.
Good morning, sir. Can you please state and spell your name for the record?
Antonino Trupiano. It's Antonino Trupiano.
The record should reflect that this is the deposition of defendant Trupiano taken pursuant to notice and note be used for all purposes permitted by the rules. Sir, you were here for the first round of depositions, or at least for part of them, correct?
Yes.
And you're aware of the basic rules of depositions, are you?
Yes.
I'm going to be asking questions. At any point in time, some of the other attorneys may object. If they do, please hold your answer until we're done making whatever record we need to make. At that point in time, your attorney will probably turn to you and tell you to answer the question. Do you understand that?
Yes.
If I ask you a question and you answer it, I'm going to assume that you both heard and understood it. Is that fair?
Yes.
And if at any point if at any point you don't understand or hear a question, please just let me know and I will repeat it or rephrase it. Fair enough?
Yes.
One last thing is that everything is being recorded and written down. Eventually it's probably going to be transcribed, so therefore we need verbal answers for every single question, so no anything like that. Fair enough?
Yes.
Thank you. Where are you employed?
I'm employed by the City of Grosse Pointe Farms Department of Public Safety
How long have you been employed there?
since 2002.
When you first got hired in, what was your job?
Public Safety Officer.
And what are the duties of a public safety officer?
Duties as a police officer, routine patrol, traffic enforcement, and also as a firefighter.
Have you been promoted since 2002?
Yes.
What have been your promotions and when, please?
I was promoted to sergeant in 2014.
That was the first one and only one?
That was the first and only one.
So your current title is Sergeant Trupiano?
Yes.
Can you take us through your training, please? Starting with whenever it is that you first started to train for a police officer.
I was hired by the Detroit Police Department in December of 1999. I attended the Detroit Metropolitan Police Academy from December to May of 2000. I was employed by the Detroit Police Department till 2002 when I was hired here as a public safety officer. I've had 40 to 50 classes pertaining to police work and firefighting.
What is a 4250 class, please?
40 to 50 classes.
40 to 50 classes since being hired as a police officer here in 2000, or as a public safety officer in 2002?
Since my employment with the Detroit Police Department in 1999.
Gotcha. Okay. Since then, go ahead.
Majority have been with the City of Grosse Pointe Farms.
Have you received any certificates or any other degrees since you started working for Grosse Pointe Farms in 2002?
Yes.
What were they and when, please?
I received a Bachelor's of Science from Siena Heights University in Public Safety Studies in 2011. And the 40 to 50 classes all were certificate classes.
Is there somewhere where is there a record of all these classes that you took and certificates that you've received?
I imagine there would be.
You don't know them all off the top of your head, do you?
No.
You know that you're here testifying today in a lawsuit in which you're a named defendant, correct?
Yes.
What did you do to prepare for the deposition today, if anything?
I reviewed my interrogatories as well as the case file.
What does the case file include?
The initial reports, the handwritten case notes from the case jacket. I'm not sure everything that they include.
Anything else?
There's the Grosse Pointe Woods reports. There's everything that was in the case file. The Horizon record, witness statements from David Grant, evidence tags, release slips.
David Grant gave a witness statement?
Yes.
Did you discuss your testimony today with anybody other than with your attorney?
No.
Did you discuss the testimony with any of the other people who have been deposed yet in this case?
No.
Did you discuss their testimony with them after they testified? Either of them?
No.
Did you review either of their transcripts or video testimony?
No.
Do you recall receiving interrogatories in this case?
Yes.
And did you answer them with the assistance of your attorney?
Yes.
And are all the answers true and accurate to the best of your recollection?
Yes, there.
And did you sign the signature page dated June 17, 2015?
You'd have to refresh my memory for the date, but yes, I did.
And that signature affirms that all the answers to these interrogatories are true, correct?
Yes.
Let me just indicate for the record they were true at the time of his signature. He has brought to my attention that with respect to the interrogatory asking about when he met Tim Matouk, he obviously met Mr. Tim Matouk in the deposition process, which occurred subsequent to his answer to these interrogatories. If that is a big deal to you, we can obviously file an amendment, but I'm just putting that on the record because that's the only modification.
Okay, well, I'll say on the record that an amendment is not going to be necessary if that's the only difference. I would like to follow up with you on that, though. Sergeant Trupiano, is that indeed the first time that you met Tim Matouk?
Yes.
Had you ever previously spoken to him on the phone?
No.
Emailed him?
No.
Been in contact with him in any other way? Facebook, Twitter, God knows what other social media devices there are?
No.
How is it that you came upon the scene at St. Paul's Church on January 12, 2010?
I was called to the scene with all 30 units for PSO Colombo, who had a suspicious situation.
And the record should reflect that the plaintiff, Michelle Romain, just walked into the room and is sitting next to me. Can you go off the record for a second, please?
The times 11:22:45 are now off the record.
So,
Times 11:23:13 are now back on the record.
so you were called all 30 units, which was explained to me last time. The 30 unit is a car number that begins with the number 3, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Because when I first read that, I thought that there were 30 units that responded, but that is not correct.
That is not correct.
Okay. How many cars were there that responded? In total, if you know.
I wouldn't know an exact number.
Do you know how many got there before you, if any?
Yes.
How many?
2.
Which 2?
PSO Colombo and Lieutenant Rogers.
So was Colombo, who was the first one on the scene, if you know?
That would be PSO Colombo.
And did he tell you how he came upon the scene and why he felt that he needed to call all 30 units.
That would be PSO Colombo.
Colombo,
you referred to. Thank you.
He explained to me what he observed there at that time.
And what is it that he told you he observed?
The same things that I observed.
And what is that?
A vehicle parked on the north side of Lakeshore in St. Paul's Church, very late at night, no one around. As he looked towards the water, walked upon, you could see tracks leading to the water's edge, and no tracks leading back from that.
Tracks from where?
From in the snow, down the embankment.
Over 100 feet away from the vehicle, correct?
No, it's not 100 feet. I would say the road is maybe 60 feet, 75 at the most.
From where the car was parked?
Yes.
And did you or anybody else that you know of actually measure that distance?
Not to my knowledge.
If somebody were to measure it, would you have any reason to doubt the measurement?
No.
So you don't believe that it was about 130 feet away from the vehicle?
I don't believe it was that far, no.
Upon arriving at the scene, did you come to any immediate conclusions as to what took place there?
No.
Do you know who called the Coast Guard?
No, I do not.
What time is it that you arrived on the scene?
Shortly before 10 p.m.
And what is it that you did when you got there shortly before 10 p.m.?
I pulled up on the scene, I observed the car. PSO Colombo showed me where the tracks were. I observed the tracks leading down to the water's edge.
Did you run lean at any point?
No.
Do you know if Colombo did?
I'm assuming he did. I don't know.
Did he tell you he did?
I didn't discuss that with him.
Did you ask him whose car it was there?
Did I ask him whose car it was?
Whose vehicle it was?
No.
That's not something that the two of you discussed? Was whose car that could have been?
No.
You're talking about the time of his immediate arrival still.
Correct.
Thank you.
Were you able to gain entry to the vehicle?
Yes.
Prior to gaining entry to the vehicle, did you or anybody else run lean on the license plate to see whose vehicle it was?
Yes.
And who is it who ran lean?
I believe PSO Colombo.
So this would have been right around 10 p.m., correct?
Yes.
Do you know what time it was?
What time he ran me?
Yeah.
Yes.
What time was that?
9:55 p.m.
How is it that you know it was at 9:55 p.m.?
I read it in the case packet.
When lien is run, do you know whether or not a record is kept somewhere of lien being run?
I believe the state keeps records.
Does Grosse Pointe Farms keep records?
Not in our in-car computers, that would be impossible.
What about back at the station? Or headquarters?
If dispatch ran a plate, that should be in the dispatch station.
What do you mean by that it should be? Is that part of protocol for it to be kept in the dispatch day sheet?
Dispatch writes down everything that they do that day. That they're supposed to write down everything that they do that day.
Dispatch would be people at the station?
Yes.
And where are those records kept?
I do not know.
Are they ever destroyed?
Not to my knowledge.
going to hand you, so I'm going to hand it to your attorney first. A letter that I received from your attorney together with a bunch of lien records. Can you please take your time and look through that stack of records and let me know if you see the 955 lien that was run by Colombo, please?
I will stipulate there is no copy of that, as was indicated in the correspondence that I sent to you, which had the statement from Ms. Liz Canfield with her summation of the liens received that evening, which I believe demonstrated at approximately 9:53 p.m. that evening, the lien was accessed at 2 times, both for the plate and for someone's driver's license. So what's your next question? I'll stipulate there's no copy of that in there.
What's your question, Counsel?
Is there any record of the lien that was run at 9:55 p.m. here?
Not at 9:55 p.m.
And did you hear the stipulation that your attorney just placed on the record?
Yes.
Does that refresh your recollection as to whether or not lien was run at 9:55 or at 9:53?
9:53.
Okay, so it would be 9:53. Was lien run earlier than that?
I have no idea.
What was learned after Colombo ran lien at 9:53, if you know?
After he ran lien at 9:53 would be the registered owner of the vehicle.
And who was the registered owner of the vehicle?
I believe that would be JoAnn Matouk.
And what's the address of Michelle? Is there an address that showed up on lien?
I would have to review the lien printout.
Please do.
The address for the 2008 Lexus, license 5 Frank Union, Edward 55, would be Michelle Romain at 693 Morningside Lane, Grosse Pointe Woods, 48236.
So at that point, were you looking for, well, at that point, had you or Colombo decided that there's a person of interest or a person that would be considered missing?
Not at that time. We would have a suspicious situation.
Okay, and that suspicious situation would include whom, please?
At that time, the registered owner of the vehicle.
Which would be Michelle Romain, correct?
Correct.
Now, what happened after you learned of the owner at 9:53 p.m., the registered owner?
I did not learn of the owner at 9:53 p.m.
Do you know what action was taken after the owner was learned by somebody at your department?
No, I do not.
Do you know if anybody was dispatched to the home of Michelle Romain to see if she was alive and well?
I believe so.
And do you know who it is who called in to dispatch to ask for an officer to be dispatched to her home?
I do not know.
Do you know if it was somebody from your department or a different department who actually went to Michelle's home?
I do not know.
Do you know what time that person arrived at Michelle's home?
No, I do not.
If that person arrived at 9:29 p.m., then that would have been almost a half hour before you ran lien, correct?
Object to the form of the question. He's already testified he has never run a lien.
Fair enough, let me rephrase it. If an officer showed up to Michelle's home at 9:29 p.m. and advised her that her mother was missing, that could not possibly have been a result of the LEIN check that was done at 9:53 p.m., correct?
Objective form and foundation, you're calling for speculation on a hypothetical which does not have any facts to support salient evidence. You may answer the question over my objection.
9:29 would definitely be before 9:53 p.m.
At any point, do you know if phone records were retrieved in the investigation of missing JoAnn Romain?
Yes, they were.
Do you know whose phone records were retrieved?
I believe it's JoAnn's phone number that was retrieved.
Do you know what Michelle and her sister Kelly did upon being advised by the police that their mother was missing?
No.
Do you know whether or not they immediately started calling their mother and trying to find out her whereabouts?
I would not know that.
I'm going to hand you, can you please mark that as an exhibit? I'm going to hand you phone records with the bait stamp GPF, I think it's a bait stamp GPF 0043. I want you to assume for a moment that the highlighted phone numbers are numbers from Michelle Romain and Kelly Romain, in which they are calling their mother, JoAnn Matouk Romain. Do you see a particular time where there are multiple calls in a single minute period?
Yes.
And what time is that? Between what time and what time?
There's 4 calls to the 313-820-7091 from 313-570-3242, also 310-8590, 570-3242, 570-3242 at 0:42:33 up until 0:45:38. There's 3 calls that were within 1 minute.
And that would be at 12:42 a.m., correct? On January 13th?
Yes.
A few hours after JoAnn disappeared, correct?
Objective form, I don't think it laid any foundation as to when JoAnn disappeared.
Fair enough, a few hours after LEIN was run, correct? For the first time.
Yeah, 3 hours.
Okay, do you see anywhere else on that page where multiple calls are made within a 1 minute period?
Yes.
And what time is that?
That'd be 21:29.
21:29:16 to 21:29:42, correct?
3 calls, yes.
With the middle call being 21:29:31, correct?
Yes.
3 calls were made at 9:29 p.m., correct?
Yes.
Anywhere else where there's 3 calls being made, or even more than 1 call being made in any 1-minute period?
There's 2 more sections, but they're both from separate phone numbers within the same minute.
And what time is it that, please?
21:31:09 and 21:31:56. There's also 23:24:11 and 23:24:30. Oh, and 23:02. Oh, no, disregard that.
Okay. Do you know if anybody else knew about this vehicle, this suspicious, well, did you think that this vehicle was suspicious at all?
Yes.
And do you know if there was anybody else other than you and Colombo who could have possibly told Michelle and Kelly at 9:29 p.m. that their mother was missing?
Object to the form of the question and lack of foundation that this officer or any other of the officers in this department call Michelle at 9:29.
And that's not... Okay, so I'll rephrase the question and make it clear. Do you know if there's anybody else other than you or Colombo who knew about this suspicious vehicle who possibly could have informed Michelle or Kelly at 9:29 p.m.?
Yes.
And who would that be?
Lieutenant Rogers.
Okay, so is there anybody else? As far as you know?
At 9:29 p.m.?
At 9:29 p.m.?
No, disregard. I misspoke on that last part. All 3 of us would not know at 9:29 p.m. of this suspicious vehicle.
Do you have any idea who possibly could have told Michelle and Kelly that their mother was missing at 9:29 p.m. if indeed anybody did?
Let me object to form and foundation. You're assuming that because someone calls their mother at a given time, that it is for a specific reason that I think you would like to assume was based upon notification by an officer, as opposed to someone calling someone from a restaurant to maybe have a drink or anything of that nature. So I object to the form and foundation of your question.
And that's fair enough, but just for the record, there will be testimony at a later date and time that that is why those calls were made. So
That's fine, but take it up with those evidentiary witnesses, not somebody that doesn't know.
understood. I'm just asking you, sir, if you know of anybody who possibly could have told Michelle and Kelly that their mother was missing at 9:29 p.m.
No.
Do you know if Grosse Pointe Woods found out about this suspicious vehicle from the Grosse Pointe Farms Department or on their own? Or from some other source?
I would assume it was Grosse Pointe Farms.
Is there any evidence that you secured on the scene?
Yes.
What is it that you secured on the scene?
Her purse and a scarf.
Was her purse torn?
Yes.
I'm handing you, it's already been marked as Exhibit 9 for Rogers' deposition. Is that the purse?
Yes, I believe so.
Do you know whose hands those are? By any chance? Okay. And there was something else also that was discovered. A scarf, you said.
Yes.
And are there any pictures of that scarf?
I would not know.
Did you take any pictures?
No.
Do you know if anybody else did?
I believe Detective McCarthy took photos.
Do you know if Detective McCarthy took photos of the scarf?
No.
Do you know if the scarf was ever tested for, put through any sort of forensic analysis, DNA or any other biological evidence?
I would not know that.
Do you know where this purse is now?
No.
This is one exhibit. This is the second exhibit. What is protocol when it comes to securing evidence? Can you take us through, please?
Securing evidence would be, once you've documented that evidence, you would place it into one of our evidence lockers and lock it.
And who is able to access that evidence?
The Detective Bureau.
And what ultimately happens with this evidence?
I would not know.
Is it ever given away or destroyed?
Objection, lack of foundation. He says he doesn't know. Now you're asking him to guess.
Do you know?
I do not know.
Are you ever responsible for giving away any evidence or returning it to its owner?
No.
Do you know whatever happened with the purse or the scarf?
I do not know what happened with the scarf. I do believe that the purse was returned to the family.
I'm going to hand you what's been marked as Trupiano Exhibit 2.
And again, for the record, you have highlighted certain aspects of Exhibit 2.
Yes, I have. To save time, I'll hand you 3 and 4 as well. Looking at exhibit number 2, please. What is that document?
If you know.
I do not know.
You don't know where this document came from?
No.
Do you see where that document indicates that the purse was returned to Michelle Romain?
No.
I'm sorry, return to owner. See where it's highlighted in the top where it says disposition, return to owner?
I see disposition released to owner.
Release to owner?
Yes.
I'm sorry, release to owner. And who's listed as the owner, if you know?
The owner, according to this document, is JoAnn Matouk Romain.
And was JoAnn Matouk Romain alive at the time that this was released? If you know?
I would have no idea.
Well,
I'm not sure when her body was discovered.
didn't you conclude that she committed suicide on the evening of January 12, 2010?
I've never concluded that.
Do you know if anybody in your department has concluded that?
Not to my knowledge.
Do you have any idea what happened to her on January 12, 2010?
No.
Do you know whether she was abducted or not?
No.
Has your department ever conducted an investigation as to whether or not she was abducted on January 12, 2010?
If you know.
If you know.
I do not know.
Do you know whether or not your department concluded within 24 hours that she committed suicide by walking into the ice-cold lake?
No.
Do you know whether or not it's possible that that purse was returned to her, released to her, as indicated on that paper?
To my knowledge, no, that would be impossible.
Okay. So if that's the case, whom do you think it was returned to, if you know?
I would not know that.
Let's move on to exhibit number 3. Oh, I'm sorry. Let's go back to exhibit 2 for a second. You see at the top right above the highlight where it says officer in charge and transported by, what's the name of the officer there?
Antonio Trupiano.
And there's a number 00055. Do you have any idea what number that is?
That's my old badge number.
Okay, so the officer indicated on this Clemens report is you, correct?
I do not believe this is a Clemens report, but okay.
You see on the bottom where it says https://apps2.clemens.org and then a whole bunch of other things. Is that a yes?
It says Clemens, yes it does.
You don't know whether or not this is a Clemens document?
You say Clemens report.
I'm sorry, Clemens document.
This is a document from Clemens, yes, but it looks like the property room system.
Okay. And it says over there that the officer in charge and transported by is you, right?
It does say that.
Okay. But you did not return this purse to the owner, did you?
No, I did not.
Did you release the purse to anybody?
No.
So this document has to be incorrect. Would that be fair to say?
I did not release the purse.
Okay. I'm going to hand you document exhibit number 3 now, and exhibit number 4, which is the second page of that same document. And the officer in charge and the officer transported by this Clemens document is also you, is that correct?
On exhibit 3,
On exhibit?
yes, it's officer in charge, Antonio Trupiano, transported by Antonio Trupiano.
And what piece of evidence is this document on exhibit 3 and exhibit 4 referring to?
Exhibit 3 is the scarf, and exhibit 4... I couldn't tell you what that one refers to.
Okay. Let's go back to exhibit 3 for a moment, please. Exhibit 3 indicates that you donated the purse, correct?
No.
Does it say donated by disposition?
Yes, it does.
And towards the bottom, does it say to the Purple Heart?
I don't see where it says Purple Heart on this form.
I can see it for one moment, please. And you both exhibit 3 and exhibit 4. Do you see where it says tag number at the top?
Yes, I do.
Does that mean that that both of those documents, exhibit 3 and exhibit 4, are both referring to the same piece of evidence, that being the scarf?
Yes.
Okay, do you see on exhibit 4 where it says that it was donated to the Purple Heart?
Yes, I do.
And do you see where the officer in charge transported by is you as well?
I see activity by Brian Ford, not by me.
But you do see on exhibit 3 where it says officer in charge and transported by is Antonio Trupiano, badge number 55, correct?
Yes.
And what date, it's highlighted towards the bottom, what date is it that this scarf was donated to the Purple Heart, if you know?
It was really...
Well, let me just object. The document clearly speaks for itself. It's hearsay. You can obviously read what the document says.
Fair enough.
Sergeant.
The release date and time is 05/14/2015 at 10:47 a.m.
May of 2015, correct?
I'd have to see that back. Yes, May of 2015.
And that is after the amended complaint. I'm sorry. That is after the second amended complaint was filed in this case, correct?
I would not know that.
Is there protocol as to what you're supposed to do with evidence that is referenced in a lawsuit if you still are in possession of it, or your department? Let me rephrase that question. Is there any protocol, as far as you know, at Grosse Pointe Farms Public Safety as to how you're supposed to handle evidence that is referenced in a lawsuit that is filed against your department or against your officers?
You'd have to ask the detective bureau.
Did anybody authorize you to donate that scarf to the Purple Heart?
I did not donate that scarf, no.
Do you know if it was indeed donated to the Purple Heart?
According to this, yes.
Do you have any idea why this scarf that you marked as evidence in this case, over which there is currently a lawsuit pending, would have been donated to the Purple Heart with the lawsuit pending?
Object to the form of the question and the lack of foundation that anything, including a scarf, was donated at any time during the pending of this lawsuit.
And obviously, according to Clemens, it was, so I think it's a fair question.
It may be a fair question, sir, but you're asking him to comment as to the validity of a document he hasn't authored, that his department hasn't authored, and may be an error.
It is possible that Clemens made an error and said that he donated evidence that he didn't truly donate. But considering that that's what the evidence that I have before me says, I think it's a fair question.
What is the question again?
The question is, do you have any idea why this scarf would have been donated while this lawsuit is pending?
Objection, form and foundation again. You assume that this is an accurate depiction of something that was donated during the pendency of this lawsuit. And I object to the form of the question, and you're calling for speculation upon that hearsay document by this witness. You can answer it if you can.
This item wasn't donated while the lawsuit was pending.
When was it donated?
It was donated November 24th, 2010 at 9:12 a.m., according to your record. It was released out of the property system in 2015. It was donated in November of 2010, according to what you gave me.
That would be on exhibit what for the record? Exhibit 4.
It says there that it was donated on November 24, 2010 at 9:12 a.m. And it says that it was released on exhibit number 3 at 5/14/2015 at 10:47 a.m. What's the difference between release and donated, please, if you know?
I wouldn't know.
Do you know when it is that this case was, well, is this case closed?
Not to my knowledge, no.
Do you know if it was closed on November 24th, 2010?
Not to my knowledge.
Were there any tracks leading from the vehicle to the water's edge?
There were tracks in the snow leading to the water's edge.
I understand that, but you said that the vehicle was at least 60 to 70 feet away from where the footsteps started, correct?
Yes.
And assume, if you will, for a moment that there's actually going to be testimony that it was indeed it was actually 136 feet away. I'm asking you if there was any footprints from the vehicle to the water's edge.
No, there were no visible footprints of that dry pavement.
I'm handing you what's been marked as Rogers Exhibit number 8. I want you to take a look at that document for a moment, please. Do you know who authored this report, please?
Yes, I do.
Who is it?
That would be me.
You. So you wrote the words that are on that paper there?
Yes.
Do you see where you wrote that there were tracks led from the vehicle to the water's edge?
Yes.
And did they?
The tracks were in a straight line from the vehicle down the embankment to the water's edge.
Okay, but
there
this
were
is-
no tracks in the middle of the dry paved roadway.
Okay, so you wrote in your report that tracks led from the vehicle to the water's edge, even though in reality, tracks did not lead from the vehicle to anywhere, correct?
Correct.
Okay. In fact, the footprints didn't begin from the vehicle. They began at least 60 or 70 feet away and as much as 136 feet away, correct?
We may object to the form of your question. If you'd like to rephrase it and stick to his estimation, now asking him to agree to the distance in excess of 100 feet, which he has specifically testified to, he does not believe it was that far.
How sure are you that it wasn't 136 feet?
In my estimation, I don't believe the distance from across the lake shore is over 136 feet.
How sure are you that from where the vehicle was parked to where the footprints were found was not 100 feet, at least?
I couldn't say.
Okay, so you're not, it's possible. Are you sure at all that it's not at least 100 feet?
I couldn't give you an exact number.
Okay. So in your estimation, let's talk about, instead of putting a number on it, we'll just say the distance from the vehicle to where the footprints actually, so, well, let me ask you this. Where is it that the footprints started in reality?
On the south side of the lake shore in the snow.
In the snow. Okay. Was there any snow on the street?
There was some, not much.
Was there any snow on the parking lot?
I didn't go into the parking lot.
Were there any footprints going from the vehicle to the snow embankment?
No.
You, after you wrote in your report, tracks led from the vehicle to the water's edge. Do you have a copy of your report? Back?
Yes, I do.
Can you take a look at it?
I'm looking at it right now.
I think that's a different one.
It's not.
Okay, I think what he's looking at is McCarthy's report,
No.
summarizing everything.
This is my initial report with my statement.
Yes. So you wrote 2 reports, correct?
Counselor, for the record, he didn't write 2 reports for the evening of the 12th and early morning of the 13th. He did make 2 entries in this record. I think where the confusion might lie, Member Counsel, is that from the time of this incident until the time of this litigation, the means utilized by the LEIN system to record reports when copied during the time frame of the pendency of this action and before is different than the format you've marked as Exhibit number 8. If you compare the verbiage and information, however, they are identical.
They are identical indeed. Okay, so let's look back at your report for a moment, please. And the report that you're looking at is different than the report that I marked as Rogers number 8, as your counsel just stated on the record. However, as he also said, the verbiage is identical, correct?
Correct.
Okay, so tracks led from the vehicle to the water's edge. You wrote that, right?
Yes, I did.
And then shortly after that, you wrote, the tracks go down the embankment where an impression was made in the snow, as if the subject sat down on the first break wall and pushed off to get down to the second, correct?
Correct.
How were you able to tell all that just from looking at the tracks?
Because I walked down the embankment.
And did you take pictures?
No.
So you walked over the tracks that you discovered?
No.
Okay, did you walk next to the tracks?
Yes.
Did anybody walk over the tracks before? Well, let me ask you this. Did anybody ever take pictures of the tracks that you discovered?
Yes.
Were those pictures taken before other people walked over them?
Some, yes.
Okay. Do you know who took those pictures?
Detective McCarthy.
I'm handing you what's already been marked as Rogers number 4. Are those the tracks that you observed?
Yes.
Are those the tracks that you observed before? Well, let me ask it like this. Looking at that picture now, is that how the tracks looked when you first looked at them?
No.
So in that picture, at least, other people had already walked over the tracks?
Correct.
Can you tell me if there's anywhere in those pictures where it appears that the tracks are from a smaller high heel or similar type of shoe?
Not from this photo.
Okay, do you know if there's any photo anywhere that you can point out where there are tracks that appear to be a smaller high heel or similar type shoe print?
Not from the photos I have. No.
Have you reviewed all the photos that McCarthy took?
I reviewed all the photos in this packet.
Well, do you know whether or not you reviewed all of the photos that McCarthy took?
I believe so.
And are they in front of you right now?
I believe so.
And you can't identify a photo there that shows tracks that appear to be a smaller high heel or similar type shoe print?
Not from these photos, no.
I'd like you to look back at your report for a moment, please. Tracks led from the vehicle to the water's edge. The black scarf was located on the median on Lakeshore Drive. Did I read that correctly?
Yes.
You went on to write, the tracks appear to be a smaller high heel or similar type shoe print. Did you write that?
Yes, I did.
And yet, do you know whether or not any pictures were taken of these tracks that appear to be a smaller high heel or similar type shoe print?
No, I didn't take photos.
Do you know if anybody took photos of the tracks that appear to be a similar high heel or similar type shoe print prior to anybody else walking over those prints?
I don't know. I'm not sure what everything that McCarthy would have taken photos of.
Did anybody other than McCarthy take photos?
Not to my knowledge.
So at least the photos that we have, that you have, that McCarthy took, don't show a similar tracks that appear to be a smaller high heel shoe, correct?
They show tracks, they don't show the detail.
And when you got to the scene, who else was there again?
Lieutenant Rogers and PSO Colombo.
And neither of them took any photos, correct?
I would not know.
When did McCarthy arrive on the scene?
I'm not sure the exact time.
What did you do? What else did you do after? When did you look at these tracks? Before or after you started to look at the vehicle?
Before.
Okay, so after you saw these tracks, then you went back up to the vehicle?
Yes.
And what did you observe when you looked at the vehicle?
I could see a purse laying on the seat. I could also see a lot of just papers and whatnot scattered throughout the vehicle.
Okay. Do you know when it is that you gained entry to the vehicle?
I would say within 15 minutes of my arrival.
How is it that you gained entry?
Vehicle lockout tools.
What is that, a Slim Jim or something like that?
Like a Slim Jim.
What happened to the vehicle? And I'm asking you to skip ahead and go out of chronological order for a minute, but ultimately, where was this vehicle taken?
It's taken to Station 30 garage.
And do you know if it was locked at the station?
Yes, it was.
And who locked it?
Car automatically locks itself.
After you, who is it who, did somebody at some point look through the purse after you opened the vehicle?
Yes,
And who is it who looked through the purse?
I did.
And did you use gloves when you opened the purse?
Yes.
Do you know if the purse or the vehicle was ever checked for any sort of biological evidence?
I would not know.
Do you know how the vehicle made it from the parking lot to the impound lot?
Yes, wrecker.
How?
Wrecker? Tow truck?
Okay, wrecker tow truck. Do you recall how close the driver's seat was to the steering wheel? Was it very close, as if a short person was driving, or was it far away, as if a tall person was driving?
I wouldn't recall that.
Okay. Do you know if that's something that you or anybody else looked at?
And where the seat was positioned?
Correct.
I did not look at that.
Did you look through the purse?
Yes.
Did you see a driver's license in there?
Yes, I did.
Did the driver's license indicate that the woman who was pictured on the driver's license was 4'10"?
I don't recall that.
Did you subsequently learn that?
I've never learned her exact height. I knew she was on the shorter in stature, but I didn't know her exact height.
Do you know if you or anybody else ever checked to see if the seat was close enough to the steering wheel and to the pedals for somebody of that height to be able to drive it?
I don't recall that. I don't know if anyone would have.
Did you, prior to gaining entry, did you call any sort of service, either a tow company, AAA, anything like that, to unlock the vehicle, or did you just use your lockout techniques?
No, I used my lockout techniques.
Did you notify the Coast Guard?
No.
Did you ever talk to the Coast Guard about this case?
Yes.
When is it that you talked to the Coast Guard about this case?
When they initially arrived on scene,
And what is it that you told them?
I told them that we found a vehicle that was parked on Lakeshore. We have tracks leading to the water's edge and no tracks returning.
Did you tell the Coast Guard that there were footprints leading from the vehicle all the way down to the water?
I was standing next to him. I showed him the prints as I was speaking to him.
Did you tell them telephonically or some other way prior to them arriving?
No.
Do you recall there being a car seat in the back seat?
I do not recall any car seat in the vehicle.
If you would find a vehicle with a car seat, would you be concerned as to whether or not there's a child missing?
Yes, I would.
Do you recall having any such fears in this particular case?
None at all.
So based on your recollection and on the records that you have, well, let me ask you this. If there would have been a car seat there, would you have put that somewhere in your report?
Yes, I would.
And do you see any such reference in any of your reports?
No.
So as far as you know, are you comfortable testifying that there was no car seat in that car?
There was no car seat in the back seat of that car. No.
When you spoke to the Coast Guard, did you tell them that Michelle, the woman sitting to my right, Michelle Romain, had been looking for her mother since 5:00 p.m.?
No, I did not.
Do you know if anybody from your department did?
Not to my knowledge.
Did you at any point tell the Coast Guard that JoAnn Matouk Romain, the woman missing, suffered from any sort of mental illness or depression?
No.
Somebody you mentioned before was David Grant. Do you know who David Grant is?
He's a gentleman I spoke with several days later.
What is it that I told you, if you recall?
On January 17, 2010, he made a station report that he saw a heavyset woman wearing a dark trench coat standing on Lakeshore Drive. He stated that she was staring out into the water while standing on the north side of Lakeshore at St. Paul's Church.
How is it that he told you this information?
In person.
So he didn't call it in beforehand?
Not to my knowledge.
Do you see on the front of the report, very front page, there's some information that's written here, subject, occurrence, date, time, call source, and so on and so forth, location, dispatched offense. You see there's things that are written in here?
Yes.
Do you know who wrote this information in there?
I would have no idea.
Do you see that it says here that suspicious circumstances were reported on January 12, 2010 at 6:47 p.m.?
No, I don't see that. I see that they were reported on January 12th at 2010 at 22:58.
That's when it was reported. I'm sorry. The occurrence date and time was at 6:47 p.m., correct?
No, that was not correct. Yeah, I see it on here, but no, that is not correct.
Oh, so it's here. So somebody, whoever wrote this, got it wrong.
I'm assuming. I don't know. I didn't write it.
It also says that the call source was telephone. Is that correct?
Not to my knowledge, no.
You know who wrote this?
I have no idea.
Officer in charge is Colombo. Did he write it?
Correct.
If you know?
We don't populate this field on the report. This field is actually populated by Clemens.
Clemens populates this.
Yes.
Where does Clemens get that information, if you know?
I would have no idea. I'm assuming auto entry or from dispatch.
So on the second page, page 2 of 14 on the bottom, there are some people that are listed. JoAnn Matouk Romain as the victim, correct?
I have her listed as
Up there.
yes,
And then David John Grant as a witness, correct?
correct,
And then there's JoAnn Matouk Romain as well, correct?
correct.
And then on the next page, there's other things that are listed: handbag, purse, merchandise, automobile, car, vehicle, but no other witnesses are entered as David John Grant is, correct?
Correct.
Now, how many other people came in and gave statements of some sort to your department?
I would have no idea.
Was it more than one?
I imagine so.
Do you have any idea why David John Grant would be the only witness listed at the beginning of the report like this and none of the other ones are?
So I populated it into my field when I did the report.
And you didn't populate any other witnesses?
I didn't talk to any other witnesses.
I'm going to hand you what's already been marked as Rogers 2. And before I ask you any questions about this document, I want to ask you, do you know who it is who made the initial contact with the Coast Guard and told them to come to the area?
No, I do not.
Was it you?
No.
Like that, please. You see on the third line there where it says, and I don't have it in front of you right now because you're holding my copy, something to the effect of a woman told police that her mother had been missing since 5 p.m.
Please contact the car's owners. She stated that her mom dropped her off at a residence and then left to go to the church around 5 p.m. She has been looking for her mother since 5 p.m. The individual's purse is still in the car.
And do you know whether or not Michelle was really looking for her mother since 5 o'clock p.m.?
I have no idea.
Do you know whether or not she told anybody in your department that she was looking for her mother since 5 o'clock p.m.?
I would not know that.
If Rosati previously testified that, in fact, Michelle never told anybody in your department that she was looking for her mother since 5 o'clock p.m., would you have any reason to doubt the veracity of that statement?
No.
You didn't tell that to the Coast Guard, did you?
No.
And you don't know who did, right?
I would have no idea.
I'm going to hand you what's been marked as Rogers 5. you can't tell that it's highlighted, but it really kind of is. This paragraph over here in the middle,
We're starting no.
where it starts, footprints led. What does it say there?
Footprints led from the car onto the ice and then into the water's edge. No footprints returned from the water.
Is that information that you provided to the Coast Guard?
No,
Do you know who did it?
I would have no idea. I'm imagining he.
You don't have to speculate.
Is this information true or false?
Is what information true or false?
The statement that, thank you, I'll be more clear. The statement that footprints led from the car onto the ice and then to the water's edge. Is that statement true or false? And please feel free to explain if you need to explain. I'm not trying to corner you.
Footprints led from the curb to the water's edge, down the embankment, over a small section of ice and into the open water.
So footprints did not lead from the car, correct?
Footprints did not lead on the dry pavement. They were in a straight line from the car, but they did not lead on the dry pavement.
So just so that I'm clear about this, there were no footprints that led from the vehicle to the snowy area at least 60 or 70 feet away. In your estimation, what is it that brought your attention to look at the waterfront at least 70 feet away from the vehicle?
PSO Colombo.
Do you have any idea, or did he tell you what it is that brought his attention to look at the water instead of looking around the vehicle for clues?
No.
Can I have a minute, please? Off the record.
The time is 12:21 now.
This is Mr. Chair.
The time is 12:22:26. We're now back on the record.
At this time, I have no further questions for this
Can I
witness.
see
I
that?
have no questions. It was on the chair.
I fell out of the file.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I have no questions. I said that.
I have a few. Sergeant Trupiano, I'd like you to review the entry in the Grosse Pointe Farms Department of Public Safety report that you entered on January 13, 2010, 1:52 a.m. And specifically, I would direct your attention to the second page in the third paragraph. Therein it indicates you had conversations with Mr. JoAnn Matouk, and he indicated, and I quote, John stated that JoAnn was upset and stressed over a lawsuit that started trial on 1/12/10, period. She is the plaintiff in the suit, period, unquote. I want you to assume from my questioning that indeed JoAnn Matouk Romain was a plaintiff in litigation that had begun trial on the 12th day of January 2010. Would you agree that it would be reasonable for interested members in that trial, if not knowing where JoAnn was, to contact her at 9:29 in the evening to find out where she is, such that she could either prepare or get a good night's rest for the next day's anticipated participation in trial?
Yes, I'd agree.
All right. Now, you were shown exhibits 2, 3, and 4, which I believe were marked as exhibits to your deposition. Were any of those documents, to your knowledge, generated by you?
No, they were not.
To your knowledge, were any of the documents marked as exhibit 2, 3, or 4 generated by the City of Grosse Pointe Farms Department of Public Safety?
Not to my knowledge, no.
You were asked questions as to when Detective McCarthy arrived on the scene on the evening of the 12th of January 2010. My question to you is, sir, to the best of your recollection, did Detective McCarthy arrive before or after the arrival of the United States Coast Guard rescue members?
After.
With respect to your first arrival in response to the, quote, all 30s, unquote, respond to assist Colombo, when you first arrived there and were shown the tracks from the curb to the water, the car being locked, etc., did you reach any conclusion in your mind as to whether or not someone was in the water?
Yes.
And what was your conclusion at the time when you arrived at the scene of this incident?
That we had a body in the water.
At that point in time, when it was concluded by you that there was a body in the water, did you have a discussion concerning that issue with PSO Colombo?
Yes.
Did you have a discussion concerning that issue with Lieutenant Rogers?
Yes.
And during those discussions, did they likewise agree that it appeared that a body was in Lake St. Clair?
Yes.
At that point in time, the activities that were being undertaken by the members of the Grosse Pointe Farms Department of Public Safety, I'm assuming were not a murder investigation, true?
True.
What were the responsibilities and activities at the time of your arrival and conclusion that a body might be in Lake St. Clair?
It'd be a search and rescue or recovery.
Now, you were asked questions about about a seat in this car and the position that it was in. You don't have any idea as to whether or not anyone could have moved that seat before exiting that vehicle, do you?
I would have no idea.
And you likewise, I'm assuming, have no idea if that seat was a power-activated mechanism by which to adjust the distance from the pedals, the height of the seat, any of that. You didn't start this car, did you?
No, sir.
And would I be correct, there would be no means available to you, short of perhaps utilizing the skills often practiced by criminals to start stolen vehicles, to start the car at the scene?
No, there was no way to start the car at this
All
time.
right. Now, at any time before January 12, 2010, did you know JoAnn Matouk Romain?
No.
Did you have any professional contact, and by that I mean in the course and scope of your profession as a law enforcement officer, come into contact with JoAnn Matouk Romain?
No.
At any time before January 12, 2010, did you have any social contact with JoAnn Matouk Romain?
No.
At any time before January 12, 2010, did you have any professional contact with Tim Matouk?
No.
At any time prior to January 12, 2010, did you have any social contact with Tim Matouk?
No.
At any time before January 12, 2010, did you have any professional contact with Bill Matouk?
No.
At any time prior to 2010, January 12th, did you have any social contact with Mr. Bill Matouk?
No.
Prior to January 12th, 2010, did you know who John Matouk was?
No.
Prior to January 12th, 2010, did you have any professional contact with John Matouk?
No.
At any time prior to January 12th, 2010, did you have any social contact with Mr. John Matouk?
No.
At any time before January 12, 2010, did you know Michelle Romain?
No.
At any time before January 1st, 2010, did you strike that? At any time before January 12th, 2010, did you have any professional contact with Michelle Romain?
No.
At any time prior to January 12th, 2010, did you have any social contact with Michelle Romain?
No.
At any time before January 12th, 2010, did you know Kelly Romain?
No.
At any time before January 12th, 2010, did you have any professional contact with Kelly Romain?
No.
At any time before January 12th, 2010, did you have any social contact with Kelly Romain?
No.
At any time before January 12th, 2010, did you have any professional contact with Michael Romain?
No.
At any time prior to January 12th, 2010, did you have any social contact with Michael Romain?
No.
At any time before January 12th, 2010, did you even know Michael Romain?
No.
At any time before January 12, 2010, were you aware of any type of relationship between JoAnn Matouk Romain and Tim Matouk?
No.
At any time before January 12, 2010, were you aware of any relationship between JoAnn Matouk Romain and John Matouk?
No.
At any time prior to January 12, 2010, were you aware of any relationship between JoAnn Matouk Romain and Bill Matouk?
No.
At any time prior to January 12, 2010, were you aware of any relationship between JoAnn Matouk Romain and Michelle Romain?
No.
Were you aware at any time before January 12, 2010 of any relationship between JoAnn Matouk Romain and Michelle Romain?
No.
At any time before January 12, 2010, were you aware of any relationships between JoAnn Matouk Romain and Kelly Romain?
No.
At any time prior to January 12, 2010, were you aware of any relationship between JoAnn Matouk Romain and Michael Romain?
No.
Prior to January 12, 2010, were you aware of any relationships between JoAnn Matouk Romain and David Romain?
No.
At any time, either before or after January 12, 2010, were you ever aware of any animus between Tim Matouk and JoAnn Matouk Romain?
No.
Did you, after interviewing Mr. David Grant, have any further involvement with this case?
No.
Were you ever involved in actually investigating in any fashion the disappearance of JoAnn Matouk Romain?
No.
At any time, have you ever become aware of any telephone conversations that may have taken place between JoAnn Matouk Romain and Tim Matouk?
No.
At any time, have you ever become aware of any telephone conversations that may have taken place between JoAnn Matouk Romain and John Matouk?
No.
At any point in time, have you become aware of any telephone conversations that may have occurred between JoAnn Matouk Romain and her separated husband, David Romain?
No. No.
At any point in time, did you ever become aware of any intent on the part of Tim Matouk to harm in any way JoAnn Matouk Romain?
No.
At any time, did you ever become aware of any intent on the part of John Matouk to harm in any way JoAnn Matouk Romain?
No.
At any point in time, did you become aware of any intent on the part of Bill Matouk to harm JoAnn Matouk Romain?
No.
At any point in time, did you become aware of any intent on the part of David Romain to harm JoAnn Matouk Romain?
No.
at any point in time, are you aware of anyone that had an intent to cause any type of physical harm to JoAnn Matouk Romain?
No one.
At any point in time, have you ever become aware of anyone who intended to, in any fashion, kidnap, abscond with, or take JoAnn Matouk Romain away in any fashion against her will?
No, no one.
Were you ever aware at any point in time that Tim Matouk in any way harmed JoAnn Matouk Romain?
No.
At any point in time, did you ever become aware of David Romain actually physically harming JoAnn Matouk Romain?
No.
At any point in time, did you receive any information that John Matouk committed any type of physical harm upon JoAnn Matouk Romain?
No.
At any point in time, were you ever made aware of any type of threatening behavior made by Tim Matouk to JoAnn Matouk Romain?
No.
At any point in time, were you ever made aware of any threats to harm JoAnn Matouk Romain made by David Romain?
No.
At any point in time, were you ever aware of Bill Matouk threatening to harm JoAnn Matouk Romain in any manner whatsoever?
No.
At any point in time, were you ever made aware of John Matouk threatening to harm JoAnn Matouk Romain?
No.
Were you ever made aware in any type of professional capacity or learned as a result of your professional capacity that JoAnn Matouk Romain complained to police agencies that she was being followed, her telephone was being tapped, her mail was being tampered with, and her home was being invaded?
Not to my knowledge, no.
Are you ever aware of JoAnn Matouk Romain reaching out to any police agencies for personal protection against Tim Matouk?
No.
Same question with respect to Bill Matouk.
No.
Same question with respect to John Matouk.
No.
Same question with respect to David Romain.
No.
Same question with respect to any member of the public.
None that I know of.
Did you in any fashion participate in the disappearance of JoAnn Matouk Romain?
No.
Did you in any fashion whatsoever participate in any murder of JoAnn Matouk Romain?
No.
Are you aware of anyone who may have murdered JoAnn Matouk Romain?
No.
Are you aware of anyone who may have caused physical injury to JoAnn Matouk Romain?
No.
Have you in any fashion participated in any conspiracy with anyone, including all of the named defendants in this lawsuit, to cover up the murder of JoAnn Matouk Romain?
No.
Have you at any time participated in concert with or in conspiracy with anyone, including the named defendants in this litigation, to cover up or impede the search for JoAnn Matouk Romain?
No.
Have you conspired with anyone to cover up a murder of JoAnn Matouk Romain?
No.
Did you in any fashion whatsoever, in concert with the other defendants in this case, all of them, some of them, or one of them, act to deny JoAnn Matouk Romain any of her civil rights, including but not limited to the equal protection under the laws of this state and of the United States?
No.
Are you aware of anyone who did?
No.
Did you ever, on your own and alone, in any fashion, deny JoAnn Matouk Romain's civil rights, including her equal protection, under the laws of the state of Michigan or the United States of America?
No.
Are you aware of anyone who did?
No.
Given your limited involvement in the disappearance of JoAnn Matouk Romain and in efforts to determine if she indeed was the person in the lake, did you ever find anything in your personal involvement that in any way suggested that Tim Matouk, in any manner whatsoever, played a role in the disappearance of JoAnn Matouk Romain?
No.
Are you aware of any actions or omissions taken by any members of the Grosse Pointe Farms or Grosse Pointe Woods Police Departments and/or where Timothy Matouk in any way created a special danger as to JoAnn Matouk Romain?
No.
At this point in time, given everything that you know about this case and its investigation, are you aware of any evidence that substantiates that any of the defendants in this case were involved in the disappearance of JoAnn Matouk Romain?
No, I don't.
Given everything you know about this case and its investigation, are you aware of any evidence that in any manner whatsoever links any of the defendants in this case to a murder of JoAnn Matouk Romain?
No.
Returning to your recollections as to when Detective McCarthy may have been on the scene, I asked if he arrived before or after the United States Coast Guard, and you indicated to me that he arrived after the Coast Guard arrived. My question is, do you have any recollections as to whether or not Detective McCarthy arrived on January 12, 2013, before or after members of the Grosse Pointe Farms dive team arrived on the scene of this incident?
I have no recollection. I'm not sure who was there first.
I don't want you to guess. Thank you. I have no further questions.
I just have a couple. Was the Coast Guard notified before or after you ran that, or that LEIN check was run at 9:53 p.m.?
I'm assuming after.
And how long did your department have this case of JoAnn Matouk Romain before it was turned over to Grosse Pointe Woods?
If you know.
If you know.
I do not know.
Was it ever investigated as anything other than a suicide?
If you know.
I would not know.
Did you investigate it ever as anything other than a suicide?
I didn't investigate it.
Okay, so all those questions that your attorney just asked you about whether or not you uncovered any evidence of that whole list of questions he gave you, it's not anything that you investigated, is it?
The initial incident from the first day is my portion of it. I didn't investigate anything further after that day.
Okay. I have nothing further.
We are finished.
The time is 12:44:24. That concludes the deposition.